Industry, Commerce of the Kingdom of Bahrain, His Excellency Zayed Zayani, and also His Excellency, the Chief Executive of the Bahrain Economic Development Board, Khalid Humaydan. I'm Jennifer Miel, the Executive Director of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce's U.S. Bahrain Business Council. And on behalf of our new President and CEO, Ms. Suzanne Clark, and our Senior Vice President for Middle East and Turkey Affairs, Mr. Kushtoksi, I want to welcome you all here for today's session. This will be a dynamic discussion with both the Minister and the Chief Executive of the Bahrain Economic Development Board. As we are starting to resume travel, we are now staying connected in the interim through these virtual meetings. But we encourage everyone to keep your cameras on and you can stay engaged throughout the event during the remarks portion and then participate in the live discussion following some of the remarks. So at this time, we encourage you all to turn your cameras on. You can leave yourselves on mute until you'd like to speak, and we'll start today's program. Many of you know that Bahrain is the pearl of the Gulf, a very dynamic business and regional hub that's located in a strategic location with great access to Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, and other key markets in the Gulf region. Because of Bahrain's cost competitiveness, dynamic workforce, talented human capital, and visionary leadership, many U.S. companies for decades have been located in Bahrain as both a hub and also a strategic complement for their presence in the Gulf. We'll hear from some of Bahrain's leadership today, namely the Minister and also Chief Executive of Bahrain Economic Development Board. And we're also very delighted to have here with us today U.S. Chargé d'Affaires from the U.S. Embassy in Manama, and also the Bahrain ambassador who's located in the United States. Many of you know about the advantages of doing business in Bahrain, including the free trade agreement. We also note that there was a recent MOU signed between the US and Bahraini governments about the establishment of American trade zone in Bahrain that offers numerous advantages for logistics and manufacturing. We'll hear more about these today. So without further ado, I'd like to thank all of our speakers again here today and our co-chairs of U.S. Bahrain Business Council, represented here today by Jonathan Whitmer, CEO of West Point Home, Khalid Zayani, Honorary Chairman of Al Zayani Investments and Medal Cables, and also Max Peterson, Global Vice President for Worldwide Public Sector at Amazon Web Services. I'll now turn it over to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce's local affiliate, the American Chamber of Bahrain, represented here by Case Zubi, the president. Case?
Yeah, Jennifer, thank you very much to you and the US BBC, EDB, and MIC for organizing this important opportunity. As you will hear in the roundtable, Bahrain offers many great reasons to establish business in Bahrain, not least of which are the diverse organizations that offer support to new businesses to facilitate their establishment and success in the regional market. The American Chamber of Commerce, AmCham Bahrain, has successfully held elections a few days ago relevant to the election of its new board members for a further term of 2 years. AmCham plays an integral role in the robust and supportive business development ecosystem in Bahrain, which includes EDB, MITC, and others. I take great pleasure in introducing Ethan Goldridge, who I had the pleasure yesterday of meeting, the acting Chargé d'Affaires at the US Embassy in Bahrain. Ethan is known to many since he brings a long career worth of international and regional experience, having been posted in Kuwait, Iraq, Israel, and the UAE, and has had oversight of Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, as well as the Arabian Peninsula. Ethan, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Case, and it was indeed a pleasure meeting you and other members of AmCham yesterday. Good morning to everyone in Washington, especially to His Excellency Ambassador Sheikh Abdullah, and good morning to everyone joining us here in Bahrain, especially to His Excellency the Minister of Commerce, Industry and Tourism. I would also like to wish good morning to everyone else on the line who is joining us today. I'd like to thank the Economic Development Board and the U.S. Chamber of Commerce for the invitation to speak during tonight's virtual event. And I would like to introduce myself. My name is Ethan Goldridge. I'm charge d'affaires at the moment at the U.S. Embassy, while Maggie Nardi, who many of you may know, is on her vacation. So I had the distinct honor and pleasure of being sent out here for a month to cover her position while she was away. She's coming back. She's back this week. So probably the next time any of you engage with our embassy, you will find Maggie back here. But you certainly have a new friend for Bahrain and myself after the great experiences I've been having here. As many of you know, President Biden nominated Steve Bondi to become the next U.S. ambassador to Bahrain. And we expect the confirmation process to take shape in the coming weeks. We hope to welcome Steve to Bahrain later this year, and in time to lead the embassy's efforts to further commercial opportunity in partnership with the U.S. Bahrain Business Council and the Economic Development Board. So that's something I think all of us are looking forward to, having a U.S. ambassador back here in Manama. I'm very excited about today's event and hearing more about the emerging opportunities in Bahrain's manufacturing and logistics sectors. The U.S.-Bahrain Free Trade Agreement is celebrating 15 years of shared prosperity this year. Bahrain is now a strategic commercial platform for American companies looking to establish themselves in the heart of the Gulf region. The FTA eliminates tariffs and customs fees on virtually all merchandise imported to Bahrain from the United States. The same is true for exports from Bahrain when they arrive in the United States. And Bahrain's transparent, streamlined, and tax-free business environment make opening a new business easy and straightforward. Whether as a logistics or manufacturing hub or a base from which to launch new investments, enterprising U.S. companies should consider Bahrain an attractive gateway to access the broader Gulf economy and beyond. From Bahrain, American companies can immediately access and export products and services to the GCC's 50 million consumers, or they can import finished products back to the U.S. market under the Free Trade Agreement. With modern road, air, and seaport infrastructure, Bahrain's Central Gulf location also provides U.S. companies with strategic commercial links to emerging economies, not just in the Middle East, but across East Africa and the Indo-Pacific region as well. Our embassy remains fully engaged with the Economic Development Board and the U.S. Chamber of Commerce to ensure our commercial partners leverage the U.S.-Bahrain Free Trade Agreement to access new markets in Bahrain and throughout the region. If you are serious about establishing yourself in Bahrain or have an interest in expanding your investment footprint across the GCC, I would encourage you to contact the U.S. Embassy's commercial service team, who can provide further support and insight. Bahrain is a valued U.S. ally and a close partner on many issues. Building stronger commercial relations with Bahrain is a U.S. government priority, and we are here to help. We are here to help and support businesses that are interested in doing that. You can find contact information for our commercial services team on our embassy website. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. We look forward to engaging with you to explore new business and investment opportunities in Bahrain's manufacturing and logistics sectors. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you very much for your remarks, Chargé d'Affaires. We really appreciate you joining us for this session and for filling in for Maggie Nard, and great update about the new ambassador to Bahrain. We very much look forward to hosting him for consultations with the private sector before he departs to Manama. We appreciate the U.S. Embassy in Manama's participation here today and all of your thoughts. We will now be turning to His Excellency Sheikh Abdullah bin Rashid Al Khalifa, who will give remarks from the Bahrain Embassy in the United States. Many of you know Sheikh Abdullah. He was appointed ambassador in 2017 and really hit the ground running. Very dynamic, engaging ambassador who's been a friend and a staunch advocate for the business community and commercial relations between the U.S. and Bahrain. Before his position as ambassador, he was governor in Bahrain in the most development region, the Southern Governorate. And we're delighted to have him here today giving remarks, and also note that he is already traveling throughout the United States and really leading the charge in some of the ambassadorships with engaging the community around the US through a recent visit in Florida. And we're delighted to have here today the Palm Beach World Trade Organization, which he visited very recently. So turn it over to you, Sheikh Abdullah. Thank you again for your remarks.
Jennifer, thank you so much for the kind introduction and kind words. Good morning for everyone that is here with us in DC. Good afternoon to both their excellencies and colleagues in Bahrain. It's such a pleasure to be in the company of friends. As you very well know, Bahrain has always appreciated the US Chamber's efforts to strengthen the trade and investment links between our two nations. Our bonds would not be prosperous without the drive and energy of organizations like the Ministry of Industry, Commerce, Tourism, Bahrain Economic Development Board, as well as the US Bahrain Business Council, and our friends at AmCham Bahrain. While there are many facets to the US-Bahrain relationship, we always focused on our deep ties, which may be traced back to the late 19th century. Today, that relationship has been upheld by openness, respect, and tolerance of our faiths and beliefs. Nonetheless, I want to make a special mention that by the end of this year, our countries will reach a significant milestone, which is the 50th anniversary of the US-Bahrain diplomatic relationship. We look forward to commemorate this special relationship with our counterparts in Manama. In the past, we have always talked about our shared interests while situated in the nation's capital here in Washington, DC. And like Jennifer just mentioned, it has become a priority for us to embark on a new initiative at the embassy that we call Beyond the Beltway. We believe that it is essential that we leave our comfort zone and connect with states, counties, and communities that have much to offer. Although I have to say that many will argue that, in fact, DC is not a comfortable place to be, and that beyond the Beltway is where we'll find comfort. But at the end of the day, we've expanded our outreach, and yes, I did visit Florida recently. I had the opportunity to engage directly with local business associates, trade consortiums, and the greater business community. And I'm delighted to mention that a part of my focus was on logistic cooperation. Therefore, I'm pleased to mention that we are working towards the possibility of signing another MOU, this time with Ports Miami within the foreseeable future. And we're very hopeful that those MOU come to fruition. And I trust that it is imperative that we not only focus on promoting trade opportunities, but share best practices with US institutions that will eventually enhance Bahrain's logistical infrastructure for the benefit of US companies operating in the country. Looking back, it has been 15 years since Bahrain became the first GCC country to establish a free trade agreement with the United States. As my counterpart, Mr. Goldridge put it earlier on. We are looking at the establishment of a US free trade zone in Bahrain. It is no surprise that Bahrain and the US government have signed this MOU this past January. And it's going to be uniquely dedicated for American companies to operate in Bahrain. We are in the early stages of the US trade zone. We've been pleasantly surprised to hear of the interest shown by American companies looking to maximize the opportunities associated with the zone. But today is not about me, it's about our esteemed guests, and I would love to, I look forward to the discussion. And in closing, I would like to thank the US Chamber for providing the opportunity for their excellencies to discuss Bahrain as both a manufacturing and logistics hub. Thank you very much for hosting this event, and look forward to the conversation.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for these remarks. We'll turn it now to Jonathan Whitmer, a CEO of West Point Home, who will introduce the minister.
Okay, great. So thank you. And as she mentioned, I am Jonathan Whitmer. I'm the CEO of West Point Home, and we've been manufacturing our products in the kingdom for many, many years. We're a global home fashion company with operations in countries all over the world. But I can say with zero hesitation, our operation in Bahrain sets the gold standard for us globally. It's quite literally what good looks like. The cooperation at all levels, locally, nationally, and internationally, and the amazing relationships we enjoy at all levels in the kingdom sets the standard for how to operate in today's challenging global economy, even more so during this pandemic. I was just in Bahrain a few weeks ago for meetings with some of our bankers, as well as with the EDB. And with the exception of the heat and humidity during this time of the year, I can't wait to be back. I often meet with leaders and colleagues from a variety of industries, and without exception, the number one question I always get is the same: what's it like to do business in Bahrain? So as a corporation that manufactures products all over the world, my answer is always the same. If I could put all of our factories in Bahrain, I would do it in a second. Bahrain has a strong and stable facilities and infrastructure, a collaborative commercial environment, and most importantly, it has a strong and supportive government and economic partnership programs, allowing for us to all succeed together. Now, you put that together with the skilled local labor force, the strong support of the Bahraini government, and of course, the strategic location and favorable trade agreements that Bahrain enjoys with countries all over the world. Well, like I said earlier, that's what good looks like to me. For those of you joining this session that are considering setting up operations in Bahrain, I can tell you that I'm frequently asked about doing business in the Gulf region, as others have mentioned, the commercial environments, the manufacturing environments, and of course, dealing with the local governments and the regulations, particularly as a foreign company. Now, I've had significant commercial experience in this region for over 20 years now, and I can say without hesitation, if you want to enter this region and do it properly, and position your business for many years of stability, growth, and expansion, there's no better entry point than Bahrain, especially for an internationally focused company looking to grow their business. You simply will not find a more supportive and stable environment in this region. And with that, I would now like to introduce His Excellency Zayed bin Rashid Al Zayani, Minister of Industry, Commerce, and Tourism. His Excellency was appointed to this post in December of 2014. Prior to this appointment, he led a diverse family of businesses as chairman of Al Zayani Investments, Euro Motors, Zayani Motors, Zayani Leasing, Zayani Properties, and Al Zayani Industries and Orient Motors. His Excellency has also served as the managing director of First Motors and chairman of the Bahrain International Circuit until 2016, and currently serves as the chairman of the Bahrain Tourism and Exhibitions Authority, and was appointed chairman of the Gulf Air Board in April of 2017. Finally, His Excellency sits on the boards of the Gulf Aviation Academy, the Economic Development Board, or EDB, and the Bahrain Airport Company and Business Family Network. It gives me great pleasure to introduce His Excellency Zayed bin Rashid Al Zayani, Minister of Industry, Commerce, and Tourism.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. It's always a pleasure to be amongst friends and colleagues. I wish you all well, whether you are in Bahrain or in America. And I'm very, very grateful for you taking the time to join us today. I have discussed prior to joining you today with my colleague, His Excellency Khalid Hameidan, on what we would like to show you today. And I think what I will focus mostly is how we can develop the FTA agreement that has been a huge success for both our countries going forward. And I think Khalid will take it more into detailed sectors and policy that Bahrain is pursuing to encourage foreign direct investment. Like it's been mentioned already, the FTA celebrates its 15th year of existence. It has been a huge successful agreement between our two nations, and it has reflected directly on the level of trade between Bahrain and the United States. We have seen trade increasing 3.5 times since the previous trade levels, and I think that is a testament to the success of this trade agreement. For that led us to think of how can we capitalize more on this relationship and how can we shift to a higher gear. And we thought jointly with the US administration that we want to take the relationship beyond simply trade into more joint ventures and investments. And this is why we arrived at the proposal of having a US free trade zone set up in Bahrain, an industrial park that will be dedicated to US manufacturing and that will be used as a springboard to access the region in the Gulf markets and beyond to East Africa, Southeast Asia, and Southern Europe as well. So we have managed to sign a deal, a memorandum of understanding with the United States back in January of this year, purposely for this. I have prepared a small presentation, if you allow me to share it. I don't know, that's probably with you, Jennifer, or?
Yes, we can give you the ability to share the screen. It should be on the bottom toolbar where it says green share screen.
Yeah, it says disabled. If you can let me have access, please.
I should have just enabled it. You should be able to.
Okay. Do you see it?
Yes.
Basically, just to give you an overview about the commercial sector in Bahrain, we have today about 75,000 companies registered in Bahrain. About 1% of them have US interest, and we have multiple levels of US companies represented in Bahrain throughout branches or agencies. And we have about 32 million BD, which is about roughly $86 million of direct US investments in Bahrain. Recently in Bahrain, also we have taken more of a liberalization approach to our CRs, allowing more foreign capital to own businesses in Bahrain, with the recent announcement coming as of yesterday actually, where Cabinet approved another tranche of business activities to be opened up for foreign investors in Bahrain. With that, it makes us the most liberal in the GCC in terms of foreign ownership and the most accommodating to invite foreign capital as foreign direct investment. The specific zone we're talking about is the area marked in green. It sits between an industrial park, our largest industrial park, and the main port of Bahrain, Sheikh Khalifa bin Salman port. Today, it is in the process of being reclaimed. It's about 1.1 million square meters. And we're looking at an average plot size of 5,000 square meters, or a few can be combined if need be, next to the Mondelez factory, which today sits on 250,000 square meters of land. Like I earlier said, this is earmarked specifically for US companies, whether it is for manufacturing, logistics, or distribution, and to be used as a hub to access the surrounding markets within reach of Bahrain. We have offered many incentives for companies joining here, including a subsidized rent, access to the regional markets. And one of the advantages of this area is that it is within 5 minutes from the port, 10 minutes from the airport, and less than half an hour away from the Saudi border, which is by far the largest consumer market in the region. So with that, we would like the US companies to take advantage of this new setup. We have started, as I said, the reclamation process. So we are looking at a 2 to 3 year build period, and we will start with the EDB soon, marketing the area to companies interested so they can pick up their allocated space. The next step, of course, for us as a chairman of Dalfair, we would start connectivity, direct routes to the United States. That was earmarked for the year 2020. However, COVID kind of delayed our plans, but we are still committed to that. And we are hoping that by the year 21, we will have direct connectivity to the US that will facilitate travel as well as cargo movement between the US and Bahrain. And we're really excited about that because it will be our first touch point in North America for Dalfair. With that, I think I'll leave more time for a Q&A session if there are any more inquiries. I just wanted to introduce this idea at close range to you, and I would leave the rest to my colleague, His Excellency Khalid Hameidan, to talk in more detail about the economic sectors in Bahrain. Thank you very much, and very pleased to be joining you today.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Minister, for your remarks and for this great presentation so that we can all visualize what this new U.S. Bahrain trade zone will look like. I think we can stop the share screen and now transition to your brother, Mr. Khalid Zayani, who will thank you and also introduce His Excellency Khalid Hameidan of Bahrain Economic Development Board. Mr. Khalid?
Thank you very much, Mr. Minister, my brother, for your remarks. Without doubt, Bahrain offers many advantages for U.S. companies to access the Gulf with a talented workforce and visionary business and political leadership. I am Khalid Al-Zayani, Honorary Chairman of Al-Zayani Investments and Co-Chairman of the U.S. Bahrain Business Council. It is now my pleasure to introduce the Chief Executive of the Bahrain's Economic Development Board, His Excellency Khalid Hameidan. His Excellency Khalid Hameidan was appointed as the Chief Executive of the Bahrain Economic Development Board since September 2019. Prior to that, he was the head of Global Markets Middle East for BNP Paribas. He has 20 years of experience working in capital markets and currently serves on the board of Mumtalakat. From 2014 until his appointment as Chief Executive of EDB, Khalid was also a member of the Bahrain Economic Development Board. His Excellency Khalid Hameidan.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Good afternoon, good morning to those joining us from the United States. In the next few minutes, I will reiterate the importance of this session for us. I will review Bahrain's economic priorities. I will highlight the reasons why American companies choose to do business in Bahrain. And I will conclude by introducing the role of the EDB. USA is important to us. It's the largest market in the world. It is home of the most valuable companies in the world. It's an important source of foreign direct investment for us in Bahrain. And the EDB, we are committed to continue to explore and expand the opportunities. With investors from the US, we're continuing to have more people on the ground in the States, both coasts, covering and engaging with investors to encourage them to explore opportunities in Bahrain. with regards to our relationship with the US Chamber. It's a long-standing relationship. We view it as a reliable partner. We have multiple exchanges, usually physical, but in a virtual world, this will do. And we're looking forward to the time where we can resume the old sit-togethers face-to-face. In terms of Bahrain's economy, one thing is important, and it is key to us, is economic diversification. Less than 2 decades ago, oil represented 50% of our GDP. Today, it is less than 18% of our GDP. We have multiple sectors like financial services and manufacturing competing to overcome the dominance of oil. Another thing that's important when it comes to us and our economy is that we have a young population, and we're looking to create sustainable jobs that they aspire to have in the future. There's multiple things that we need to make sure that the attractiveness of our economy, regionally, globally, is something that we constantly assess. We need to make sure that it's a win-win for an investor to come here and invest in our country. We need to make sure that we're offering the right type of environment and the right type of incentives. We know we can only do that with the help of the private sector. The government, the public sector cannot do all the heavy lifting. We need to encourage the private sector to come and invest in our country. And the principles that His Excellency the Minister referred to are the principles that we truly believe in. We need a liberal economy that is inviting to investors. And we can only do that if we are able to provide a world-class infrastructure, best-in-class infrastructure, whether it's hard infrastructure, soft infrastructure, and it needs to be fit for purpose in the digital world. We look at multiple indicators to gauge how successful we are in attracting investment. FDI stock relative to GDP is very important. Today, Bahrain has FDI stock relative to GDP above 90%, where the world average is below 50%. We are not only doing well from a global scale, but even when compared to our regional peers. Even in a year like 2020, a very difficult year where FDI flows decreased globally at a rate of 35%, Bahrain was able to maintain a small growth of 3%. This gives us a lot of confidence. If we are able to grow FDI in a very difficult economic environment, it gives us a lot of confidence that once this economy starts to gain traction and the recovery starts to improve, we should be able to continue to benefit from the trust that investors have placed in us. We have multiple American companies that's been doing business in Bahrain for decades. I would like to highlight three, and the three of them, the reason why I'm highlighting this is they chose Bahrain for different reasons. Citibank, Amazon Web Services, Mondelez. Citibank is in Bahrain because of the availability of talent. Over the decades, Citibank has hired bankers, they've hired customer service professionals, and they are looking to hire coders. They are impressed with the bilingual workforce, local workforce, and they're also very appreciative of the fact that the government of Bahrain is willing to pay to upskill Bahrainis. The financial services sector is an important sector to us, and it highlights how we can succeed in finding the right type of jobs for the local workforce. Most countries in the world, especially in this region, think that the easiest way to convince investors to hire locals is to place quotas. Financial services in Bahrain, we don't impose any quotas. We don't believe in that. Yet, without any quotas, 60% of the workforce are Bahrainis, 40% of the workforce are women, and we did that by believing in talent attracts investment and investors. Another company that has established recently in Bahrain is Amazon Web Services. Amazon Web Services was looking to establish the first hyperscale data center in the Middle East and Africa, and they chose Bahrain to be the home for their first project in this region. And we did that by convincing them that we're the right partners for them. The government of Bahrain was the first government in the world to introduce a data jurisdiction law. That means data that is hosted in Bahrain is subject to the jurisdiction of the home country, not the host country. It's often referred to as the data embassy law. Another policy that's very important to encourage people to host and to store their data on the cloud is the cloud first policy. Today, the government of Bahrain 40%, almost 40% of all the entities in the government of Bahrain store their data on the cloud. We are leading the world in that effort, and hopefully the next time we talk, that ratio is going to be higher. And that's the first step. Once the entire government's data is hosted on the cloud, we will be able to expand to other entities. Mondelez is one of the largest producers of consumer goods. They have 6 mega factories around the world. One of them is in Bahrain. They chose Bahrain because it's an efficient place to have a factory and to have a manufacturing facility. To the cost of doing business, the competitiveness, the access that we're able to give them globally is unmatched. They service from the factory in Bahrain more than 40 countries from this region and beyond. Markets as far as Australia and New Zealand are serviced and supplied by factories and products that are produced in Bahrain. And Mondelez has been here for several years, over a decade, and they continue to expand. It's very important for us to remain close to them and to encourage them to expand. We want to do everything we can to make sure that the people who invest here continue to invest here. In conclusion, I'd like to review and introduce to you the role of the EDB. The Economic Development Board in Bahrain, we're an investment promotion agency. Our job is to engage with investors and convince them to invest in Bahrain. We do that by having a dedicated service. We, as soon as an opportunity is identified, we would assign a relationship manager for every investor, and they would take them through the entire process: feasibility, registration, aftercare. During the feasibility, one thing that we have realized is most service providers, most producers have a good sense of how much demand there is for their product. What they need help in is to assess, if I was to base my business in Bahrain, what is my bottom line? What's my cost structure going to look like? We can help address all of those questions that you might have, and you're able to compare. If I was to set up in Bahrain, what would my bottom line be, and compare it to the bottom line if you were to invest or set up somewhere else. Registration, the process is very smooth, but we have a team that looks from a distance to make sure that the process is smooth and doesn't have any hiccups. Aftercare is a key component in the investment cycle. Once a business is set up, our job doesn't end. We continue to engage with the investor. Almost a third of our successes every year is the result of investors who expand their business in Bahrain. And it's important for multiple things, including troubleshooting. A COVID crisis, it throws a curveball on all of us, and you never know what to expect. Global supply chains are disrupted, and it's up to us to make sure that, to the extent possible, businesses in Bahrain can remain open with minimum disruptions. And we, as part of the aftercare, we want to make sure that all investors have the right network in terms of officials, in terms of decision makers, in terms of customers, and in terms of suppliers. We need to make sure that the community is together, working together to maximize the success of investment in Bahrain. What we would like from you is to get in touch with us. We would encourage you to get in touch with us to explore any investment opportunities that you would consider in Bahrain. Thank you very much for your time. Happy to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Your Excellency, for these remarks and this great overview of the numerous success stories that we have for U.S. companies in Bahrain. And, hopefully together we will have many more. We'd like to now encourage everyone to take part in the discussion session. You can make comments, questions, just introduce yourself, your company. So those of you that would like to participate, again, we encourage you to turn your cameras on and to unmute yourself if you'd like to speak. You can either raise your hand, put the question in the chat, or send us through the Q&A. We have some questions that were teed up in advance and submitted in advance, so I can start with some of those. One of them is regarding accessing Gulf countries from Bahrain. And of course, the largest market in the Gulf is Saudi Arabia, which Bahrain has a direct connection with vis-a-vis the causeway. Companies would like to know, what the current status of the causeway is now post-COVID, or as we transition post-COVID, and what are Bahrain's plans for continuing to leverage this really critical link and expanding the causeway. And this question could be for either Minister Zayani or for His Excellency Khalifa Maidan.
Rashid, your call.
Okay. When Khalid usually says my call, that means he wants me to answer it. I think, I'll start with the map I showed you. I mean, the physical size of Bahrain and the geographical location being right in the heart of the Gulf gives us an advantage of being a quick turnaround on logistics. So this specifically, if we speak about the US free zone, the location is very close to air, sea, and road transportation. The connectivity is second to none. And being in the heart of the Gulf, we can reach the major markets much quicker than others. The causeway has been continuously streamlined because it's a major artery for us. It links us with Saudi Arabia and beyond. It's our only land border, being an island. So it helps us a lot in the business flow. And this is why we have created in Bahrain a Bahrain Logistics Board, which I belong to. Khalid Maidan is there as well, the Minister of Transport, the Minister of Finance, and the Head of Customs. And the sole purpose of this board, which was created by His Royal Highness, the Crown Prince, the Prime Minister, is to make logistics and flow of goods easier. There is a second causeway being built to Saudi Arabia, King Hamad Causeway, which will also have, for the first time, railroad connectivity, and that will be linked to the GCC railroad grid. So that will not only drive the cost of shipping down, but it will also add more frequency and bigger volumes to move goods and cargo around. So we're doing that. We're investing heavily in expanding our air cargo in the Bahrain International Airport. And there'll be a new cargo village set up. That again was approved by the Bahrain Logistics Board. It's underway. There we aim to increase our cargo capacity threefold by the year 2030. So we have quite ambitious KPIs and targets to achieve. And we're really serious about expanding the logistics behind the manufacturing sector that we have in Bahrain.
If I can just add to that, please, is the status of the causeway. Last year, like most borders, for people, there was the health concern that was the priority, but it never closed for good. We managed to keep it open. Trucks were able to constantly deliver products from Bahrain into Saudi Arabia on a continuous basis throughout last year. And with that, we have another, and there's going to be a rail link with the new causeway, which is going to be very important for moving goods. And in terms of customs, we're very proud that our customs are using a lot of the digital technologies to minimize the time of checking. And we have invited companies from all over the world to be able to test us. We think we have the quickest way to clear a good from Bahrain into Saudi Arabia. And anybody who wants to test our capability in clearing and transporting goods effectively, cost effectively, and efficiently into Saudi Arabia is free to come and test us.
Great. Well, thank you for these details. I think, we can do a business challenge, and encourage the private sector to take you up on this offer, Mr. Maidan, to see how quickly they can clear their goods from Bahrain versus their standard route. So I think this is something that the U.S. Bahrain Business Council would like to dig deeper on with companies. So stay tuned for more information on that, everyone. In the meantime, we have additional questions from companies. I'd like to turn it over to Signa for a question related to Bahrain's health system. Mr. Saeed, are you online?
It does not look like your microphone is working. We can't hear you.
Okay. So this question was going to come from Mr. Raed Labaki from Signa. We can read the question as he was trying to ask. The question is about Bahrain's mandatory health insurance scheme, and he's wondering when is this mandatory health insurance expected to be in place, and what would its impact be on the Bahraini economy in general, specifically for companies that work in the healthcare and insurance sectors? And this probably a question for Minister Al-Zayani. And then Khalifa Maidan, if you also have additional insights to add, that would be wonderful.
I think it's more of a question to the Minister of Health, but given that she's not here today, I might as well take a shot at it. The idea behind the National Health Program is that everybody in Bahrain, foreigners or citizens, should have the privilege of being medically insured. And equally the choice to seek medical treatment in the private or public sector hospitals. Today, the public hospitals are extending their services for free, and we still have a thriving and growing private Medicare sector. In the future, once the system is launched, a patient will have the choice to visit either, and the patient will have the liberty to have his medical records in his own possession. So when he goes to see a doctor, whether a repeated visit or a first-time visit, that doctor can immediately access his medical records or her medical records on the spot by having consent from the patient and not having to refer to the other hospital or to where the records lie. So it's going to be a virtual record available, and the doctor will have immediate access to the patient's medical history, and the patient will have the choice to go to private or public health services who will be compensated through the medical scheme. Why are we doing this? For many reasons. One is to make sure that everybody has the same chance of getting medical services at the same quality and the same variety. Two is to give a chance to the private medicine to grow in Bahrain while relieving some of that burden of the government, so the government can move again from its policy of being an operator to being more of a regulator. And three is to have flexibility in movement. So I don't have to be stuck in one medical facility or one doctor. I can seek multiple opinions and I can move. I have the option to seek multiple opinions, and I can move virtually between different medical enterprises. This system was meant to be launched this year, but due to COVID, I think the priorities have been shifted to focusing on COVID. We're in the final processes of it. It all depends on how soon COVID dissipates and how relieved are we from that pandemic, so we can go back on focusing on relaunching that system. But the structure has been put in place. The IT solutions have been put in place. The insurance companies have been brought on board, and they are ready to go. We're just waiting for the right timing when the priorities move from focusing on COVID to moving on to something new.
If I may, a few things to add there. To us in the EDB, we view this opportunity as a game changer. The government is going to step back as a provider or the largest provider of healthcare services into the country and become an insurer. We pay an insurance. This is in line with the strategy. This is liberalization, the same way that we liberalized telecom. 2 decades ago, we're liberalizing the healthcare sector. And this is going to increase the role of private sector. It's going to give people choices. There is going to be more competition. And that is good. Is no longer you're forced to go anywhere. You pick where you go. As soon as you have a choice, things start to be very, very different. And there's a lot of opportunities for the private sector. In terms of digitizing medical records, that's very important. You put that hand in hand with our plan to increase genetics mapping. In the country, the opportunities start to become big. And we view healthcare, the opportunities there, as multifaceted. Many sectors are involved. Digitizing healthcare records is an ICT project. There's manufacturing opportunities that could complement our plans in healthcare, including tourism, including other sectors like tourism. We think this is a very, very big deal that's happening in Bahrain. We want to be one of the first countries in the region to be able to do that. And we think with that, the role of the private sector is going to increase. The role of the number of opportunities available for investors in Bahrain should increase with something material and exciting as changing the government's role in providing healthcare services to a country. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't know if you can hear me now. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much for the question, Ryan, and for the answer, Mr. Minister and His Excellency Hamaidan. As we all know, healthcare is something we've taken for granted, and this pandemic has taught us all that. So these advancements in Bahrain's healthcare system are ones that we will continue to watch very closely and look to get the U.S. private sector engaged in. We have another question in the chat. This can go also for both the Minister and Mr. Hamaidan. It's about some of the challenges in the GCC business climate and where companies are constantly being faced with some challenges in the GCC, be it moving regional headquarters to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia or taxes on some offshore areas. Companies feel that it's increasingly more difficult to do business in the Gulf. So what is the solution, is what Mr. Kais Zubi has asked from our AmCham.
Well, the first solution is to employ a competent lawyer like Mr. Zouji to defend your interests. I mean, there is no challenges really with Saudi Arabia. If he's referring to the latest regulation that Saudi issued about local content, then I think anything manufactured in Bahrain today could easily fulfill that requirement. If we take, for example, the largest manufacturing facility we have in Bahrain, Alba, the aluminum smelter, while Saudi has required a 40% local content to treat the products as GCC made and therefore exempt from any custom duties, they have also availed the credit system within the new procedure whereby you get credits for local employment. So the more Bahrainization you have, the more credit you have. So when you apply this formula to Alba, for example, who has 84% Bahrainization, their threshold immediately drops from 40 to 20% local content. And that is very, very achievable for somebody to have a status of a Bahraini made product. So we don't have that, we don't consider that issue to be a hurdle accessing Saudi Arabia or you know, selling or exporting our products to Saudi Arabia. Like we said in the beginning of the session, I think one of the distinguishing factors of Bahrain is the abundant local talent that you have here. That not only impacts your cost of production significantly, it also gives you long-term viability and stability in your workforce. Which is something is not to be discounted. It's something that pays off on the long term, and it's something that helps the bottom line. So we don't see the regulations in the changing in Saudi Arabia as being an issue, not to Bahrain. When you talk about free zones, we don't have the concept of free zones in Bahrain. Even the US zone, although we refer to it as a free zone, but we don't really treat it as a free zone. Maybe that's just a terminology, but in terms of effect, what we have in Bahrain, and again, we're unique in that, is that you can set up anywhere in Bahrain and be treated like you were a free zone. The essence of a free zone is basically that you are exempt from local custom duties and that you can have 100% foreign ownership. We have both in Bahrain. Any industry set up in Bahrain gets exemption from any imports of machinery, equipment, and spare parts, as well as raw materials that go into the production, regardless of where they are physically situated in Bahrain. And the same goes for ownership. all industrial manufacturing activities are available at 100% foreign ownership today in Bahrain. So I think what has happened recently in Saudi, in a way, helps Bahrain and not the other way around.
I'd like to make a few comments. One of the principles that we really believe in is competition. Competition is good. It makes us all rise to the challenge. And the truth is, this region is competing for investment with other regions in the world. Some large multinational would think of investing somewhere in the world. They would consider us versus other regions, including some in Asia, and possibly some in Europe or Africa. With regards to Saudi Arabia, the best thing that could happen to Bahrain is a growing, prosperous Saudi Arabia. And that's what we're seeing happen here. And the worst thing that could happen to us is the exact opposite. And luckily, that is not happening here. No country has ever been or managed to be self-sufficient entirely. And there will always be niches. Our responsibility, our role, our job as investors, as Bahrain, is to encourage people to be able to complement the growth of Saudi Arabia and benefit from it. And we've seen this example all over the world, is when a large economy grows, smaller economies and smaller countries around that large economy do benefit. And the same thing is expected to happen here. And there's going to be multiple niches, multiple opportunities. Growth in Saudi Arabia means that Saudis have more disposable income. Our role is to figure out what it is that they want and cater for them. And we think that presents several opportunities for investors. And it's Saudi and the region. The more we grow, we believe in collective growth. We're all going to benefit from this because at the end of the day, we're competing against other regions in the world. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much for these answers and these insights on the business climate in the Gulf and how to navigate some of these challenges and using Bahrain as a key access point and an advantage throughout this process. Realize we're almost at time, so I'll turn it to two companies. We can get 2 questions and then turn back to our speakers for answers. We'd like to turn to Eric Churchill from UPS for a question and comment, and also from MasterCard, Cynthia, who's online. First, we'll go to Eric from UPS.
Great. Thanks so much, Jennifer. Thank you, Mr. Minister, and to all of the distinguished panelists. This has been fantastic to hear. Just to give you some background, UPS has been one of the largest global shipping and logistics companies in the world. We've been operating in Bahrain since 1983, and I've had a great relationship there. I just wanted to comment that this is modernization of logistics and creating a competitive landscape this is music to our ears. This is the kind of thing that we see it with all of our customers. This is what they're looking for. I wanted to, so I think this is a fantastic step forward. I wanted to pick up on the healthcare side because I think this is really important. Healthcare touches so many other sectors, and one of them is logistics, and that's something we've learned from the pandemic. Whether it's supply chains for PPE, cold chain storage for vaccines. UPS has been very proud to be part of the vaccine distribution around the world to over 90 countries and over 300 million vaccines distributed. And we think that modernized, competitive, and high-performing logistics is at the heart of that. So I think these developments that you've discussed today are very important. I just wanted to comment on that and leave it there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I think I can speak for myself and my colleague, Mr. Hameidan. We fully agree with you that today logistics, especially in a crisis or in a pandemic, has proven to be the lifeline. And those who have managed to sort out their connectivity and their logistics managed to relatively stay stable in terms of supply. We did that very early in the pandemic in Bahrain, whether it was for medical supplies or food security. 98% of our food is imported in Bahrain. And we managed to make sure that we didn't have any disruptions very early on for as little things as face masks and equipment and gloves for medical staff, going all the way to food supply and creating a stockpile of food supply in Bahrain. We use different countries, we use different routes. For us as Gulf Air, who have predominantly been a passenger airline, we were forced to move into the cargo segment and to move in and so to speak, play our nationalistic part in supplying medical and food supplies as well. And we went to places we never flew to before, and we transported goods we never thought we would. But you're absolutely right, and this is why we think that anything, like Khalid said, at the end of the day, anything you make or you transport, you need to support it with a strong logistical foundation. And this is why we have developed the Bahrain Logistic Board to look at specifically how to be a leader in the world in the field of logistics, not just by air, but by sea and land as well.
Great. Well, thank you for that question and answer. I know we're just about at time, but we have a couple more questions that we'll look to get in before we wrap up. One is from MasterCard, Cynthia, and then we'll go into the chat. We have one other question from Cisco.
Yes, hello everyone. So my name is Cynthia Khoury and I'm the country manager for MasterCard at Bahrain. So for the people who don't know MasterCard, so we are a multi-layer company, been in the region for more than 50 years. And in Bahrain specifically, we opened our representative office back in 2016. And our regional office for the cluster, Saudi and Bahrain, is based out of Riyadh. So, well, actually, it's my first meeting today and the first workshop I would attend, but I was very much interested in hearing all the plans that we have in developing Bahrain and like I would like to comment, like for us as MasterCard, we work a lot on digitization of the payment ecosystem, but it doesn't only cover payment ecosystem, it covers different industries, right? So and like leveraging some of the latest releases or the latest technology that I believe Bahrain is leading when it comes to blockchain or to come to open banking. We are leveraging those technologies actually across all industries, right? When it comes to payment, it comes infrastructure, manufacturing, it comes to so many industries and including medical and health. So for me, actually, we just hoping that we will be able to, and like one of the main actually, main focus for us is this year, especially during COVID, is mainly to support the SMEs, right? And to see how we can to support SMEs, how to implement our commercial solutions, which work on digitization of the supply chain, right? So it can be applicable to manufacturing, logistic, or any other solution. So happy to explore further and like to see how we can support you in the government and to have our strategy aligned. Already we're working on making Bahrain as a digital hub for the region. So for us, we're working just to launch new solutions, first to be out of Bahrain and then to replicate it to other markets. So I'm more than happy and excited to launch and to work with you to see how we can implement our solution. And Khalid is already smiling because I believe we've been working very closely on different streams, right? So yeah, that's it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for your comment. Any responses, please?
Yes, I mean, I think MasterCard and any payment provider will have a huge role in the coming future. We've noticed a huge surge in e-commerce during the pandemic. We've noticed a huge shift in the attitude towards e-commerce in Bahrain, not just stuff that is bought from overseas, but local businesses have really embraced and adopted e-commerce solutions because of need, really. Some of them were reluctant in the past. They were cynical even, some of them, maybe because we're geographically small, so they didn't feel the need to invest into it or the need to have it in the first place. But we've had companies who've experienced 300, 500% growth in e-commerce. That led us as a ministry and as a government of Bahrain to launch a national e-commerce strategy, which we launched in the past quarter. It's a 5-year strategy, and it has many KPIs and initiatives, including a dedicated e-commerce law that is being drafted today, and we hope that it will be ready before the year end. So somebody like MasterCard will be a welcome partner into that. Hopefully we will engage with you, or you're more than free and welcome to engage with us to be one of the people who help us set up this strategy, because I'm sure you've had experiences around the globe and exposure to many different countries and best practices that would help us go up the curve quicker.
Absolutely, Your Excellency. So definitely, we should not thank Goldridge, right? But we cannot deny the fact that Goldridge has accelerated the adoption of digital. For us, for MasterCard, actually, we're very happy, right? Because, and especially for Bahrain, actually, the numbers has increased dramatically. So like we used to have 0 transactions of contactless. We moved up to 72% total of transactions are being contactless, right? So, and we've got the e-commerce, and that's why with the Internet of Things and the Internet of Things and having more devices connected, but they're connected more than ever. So the thing is, we're working on a lot of cyber and intelligence solutions, and we're definitely, through our advisor expertise, we're happy to support you and share with you our best practices. I'll connect offline just to see who should be our contact, and definitely we're happy to support. And I'm sorry, I had dogs in the background, so apologies if you heard it. I'm sorry.
Now, you're most welcome, and we look forward. I mean, a few years ago, I visited your MasterCard Center in Dublin, in Ireland.
Yeah.
And I was very, very thrilled to see the level of innovation and creativity you have there. So hopefully one day you have a similar setup in Bahrain, and I'm sure with our colleagues in the ADB and us as Ministry of Industry, Commerce and Tourism, being the government agency responsible for e-commerce in Bahrain, we would like to work with you to have such something set up in Bahrain as well.
No, definitely, absolutely, we will. We've got so many projects in the pipeline for you. The government, we just need to prioritize it. So when it comes to tourism, e-commerce, so we're happy to support. So I will reach out offline. Yeah, for sure. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much for that exchange on digitization and payments and e-commerce, which is, as we all highlighted, increasingly important for business and for people. We have 2 more questions before we wrap up. One is from Cisco Systems, and they're wondering about the upcoming US-Bahrain trade zone and wondering if it will include a facilitation to the supply chain from both US to Bahrain and also to other product lines from Asia. And then before we turn it over to our speakers, we also have a question or a comment from our co-chair of the US Bahrain Business Council, Mr. Khalid Sayani. Mr. Khalid?
Well, thank you, Jennifer. Just to stimulate the appetite of our American investors and friends, and to add to what has already been referred to by our Minister and His Excellency Khalid Hamidaan, Bahrain is the home of 3 prime industries in aluminium, petrochemicals, and iron. These industries need intensive energy to produce, and whoever sets up downstream industries in Bahrain will receive his stock or her stock at very competitive rate. The savings to Europe if they work in aluminium in Bahrain, if they receive liquid aluminium, their savings would be 40% of cost of production. This is why we are able in Midal, to give an example, to export to all over the world. 20% of Midal's production goes to the United States. That just shows you the importance of setting up in Bahrain to take advantage of these three prime industries and downstream American products by American companies in Bahrain. They add value and create jobs in the country, and they add a lot of profit for markets they are unable to reach just out of the United States.
Great. Well, thank you very much for that additional perspective on these three key industries in Bahrain. I'll turn it to our speakers if there's any final thoughts that you'd like to leave us with, if there's any comments you have about the integration of the supply chain and how that might work with the proposed U.S.-Bahrain trade zone. And also want to just leave you all with the fact that we as U.S.-Bahrain Business Council of U.S. Chamber of Commerce are looking forward to more in-person engagements and events, and especially welcoming either His Excellency Minister Al-Zayani when he comes to Washington, or His Excellency Mr. Hamaidan when he comes to the United States, and resuming travel as well to Bahrain, hopefully at the end of this year, early next year, to keep these valuable business connections thriving. So turn it over to our speakers for the last word, and we thank everyone for joining us here in today's discussion.
Thank you, Jennifer. Once again, it's been a pleasure joining you today. And I think we can talk endlessly about this opportunity because we're really excited about it. But we invite you to come over to Bahrain or to get in touch with us and to see it firsthand. We are quite committed to this FTA. We are absolutely committed to the new trade zone, and we see it as a great opportunity for Bahrain and for US companies to invest here. And we would like to develop serious interest now and take it further so that we start building. While we build the physical structure of the trade zone, we have companies getting ready to start constructing their own facilities and building up their teams to operate them here in Bahrain. We're also very proud to say that the major US investments who have invested in Bahrain have all been flourishing and growing in Bahrain. Some have grown, some have expanded, some have exited and moved on to other industries in Bahrain. And that shows that freedom of capital movement in Bahrain, access to financing, access to markets is all available, that has allowed them to meet their projections and exceed them. So we look forward to receiving more inquiries, and we're here to serve, and we're always open for business. Thank you very much, and bless you wherever you are.
Thank you very much. I'd like to extend a big thank you to the US Chamber for arranging this. This is a very engaging session. Thank you. And we would like to thank also all of the participants, all of the attendees for sharing their enthusiasm. Please reach out to us. The next phase of this relationship is going to be exciting, and we are here to help you in any way we can. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Mr. Minister, Mr. Hamaidan, Ambassador, also Sharjah, and all of our companies who've joined us here today. We really appreciate this dynamic discussion, and we'll be in touch about many of the follow-up items that we've discussed today. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.